What if I told you that to get the absolute best cardiovascular results of your life, you need to completely stop doing medium effort workouts?
Yeah, it sounds completely backwards, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, no more jogging at a decent clip,
Yeah.
no more pushing yourself just enough to break a sweat on the stationary bike.
Exactly. No more sitting comfortably in that middle ground.
Today, we are exploring what I would honestly call a biological cheat code. It suggests the ultimate way to train your body is to live entirely at the extremes.
Which is such a massive shift from what we are usually taught.
Right. So welcome to this deep dive. Our mission here is to cut through the exhausting wall of noise in the fitness world, to find out the most scientifically effective way to distribute our exercise intensity for maximum health and fitness gains.
And that mission is so important because the sheer amount of contradiction in the fitness landscape leaves so many people totally paralyzed.
Oh, absolutely.
We end up with these workout trends that feel, well, more like competing belief systems than actual evidence-based science.
Yeah, it's like tribal warfare out there.
It really is. But the literature provides incredible clarity if we are just willing to look at the underlying physiology.
And we have a phenomenal, rigorously documented source to guide us today. We are unpacking an article titled Adaptive Responses of Cardiorespiratory Fitness and Cardiometabolic Risk Factors to Polarized versus Other Types of Training Intensity Distribution in Obese, Untrained Females.
It is a bit of a mouthful of a title.
That's a huge mouthful, but it's a brilliant 2026 study published in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine. It was authored by Chaoyu, Zhou, Yusong, Teng, and Yinan from Liaoning Normal University.
The research they did is just stellar.
It is. And while we are definitely keeping the academic tone and that scientific clarity front and center today, we have to remember that the core question here is deeply relevant to anyone listening right now.
Oh, without a doubt.
I mean, should you push yourself to the max every time you work out? Should you just coast in that supposed fat-burning zone? Or, is there a hidden third option entirely?
And we really need to set up the stakes here, especially for this specific demographic in this study. We are looking at individuals dealing with obesity combined with low cardiorespiratory fitness.
Which is a very common combination.
Extremely common. And biologically speaking, that combination is a major, major driver for metabolic diseases. Things like type 2 diabetes and severe cardiovascular issues.
Right.
Engaging in aerobic training is universally accepted as a frontline, non-pharmacological treatment. I mean, it is literal medicine.
Yeah, exercise is medicine. We hear that all the time.
Exactly. But the scientific debate has raged over exactly how to dose that medicine.
So to understand how to dose it, we first need to define the biological zones we can train in. We hear the word zones thrown around constantly on fitness apps and watch commercials.
Oh, everywhere. Zone this, zone that.
Right. But we need to establish what is actually happening inside the body. So talk to me about these zones and the specific workout models battling it out in this study.
Sure. So the zones are defined by these biological markers called ventilatory thresholds, which we abbreviate as VT1 and VT2. Think of these as metabolic tripwires.
Metabolic tripwires, I like that.
Yeah. So zone 1, or Z1, is any exercise below that first threshold, VT1. You are working at roughly 65 to 67% of your maximum heart rate.
So pretty low intensity.
Strictly low intensity. At this level, your body is primarily oxidizing fat for fuel. Your breathing picks up a bit to expel carbon dioxide, but you can comfortably hold a continuous conversation.
Okay, so if I'm walking briskly with a friend and we are gossiping without gasping for air, I'm basically cruising in zone 1.
You're in zone 1, but then you cross that first metabolic tripwire into zone 2.
Okay, and what happens there?
Well, this sits between VT1 and VT2, hovering around 81 to 82% of your max heart rate. This is your moderate threshold intensity.
So things are getting uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable. The body is starting to rely way more heavily on carbohydrates. Lactate is beginning to accumulate in your blood faster than your body can actually clear it out.
Oh.
Yeah, you are breathing hard.
Yeah.
You could maybe speak a broken phrase, but absolutely not a full sentence.
Got it.
And finally, you cross the second tripwire into zone 3. This is above VT2, pushing past 92 or 93% of your maximum heart rate.
The danger zone.
Exactly. This is very high intensity. You are gasping, your muscles are screaming, and fatigue is accumulating so rapidly that you can only sustain this effort for a very short window.
Okay, so if we use a driving analogy here, zone 1 is like cruising efficiently on the highway. Zone 2 is that stressful stop-and-go city traffic. And zone 3 is just flooring it on a racetrack.
Yeah, that is a perfect way to visualize it.
So with those three zones clearly defined, the researchers set up a battle between three very distinct training models.
Right, the contenders.
First is HIIT, high-intensity interval training. In this model, literally 100% of the prescribed time is spent up in that grueling zone 3.
All out, all the time.
Yep. The second is threshold training, or THR. This group split their time right down the middle, 50% in zone 1 and 50% in that stressful zone 2 traffic.
And then we have the third model, which is polarized training, or POL. The distribution here is highly specific and honestly quite extreme.
Tell me about the breakdown.
The polarized group spent 75% of their time all the way down in zone 1. They spent practically zero time in zone 2.
Wait, zero?
Yeah, basically zero. And then the remaining 25% of their time was spent suffering up in zone 3.
Okay, let's unpack this, because on the surface, that polarized model sounds incredibly counterintuitive.
It does.
I mean, why would anyone avoid the middle zone entirely? It feels like we've all been conditioned to believe that a solid, medium-hard workout is the absolute bread and butter of fitness.
That assumption is exactly what the researchers wanted to interrogate. But, to do that effectively, they had to design an experiment to test them without any bias.
Right, because if one group just works way harder overall than the others, the results are useless.
Exactly. So they set up a meticulously controlled 10-week study. They recruited 40 untrained young women with obesity, ranging in age from 19 to 23.
And their BMI was between 25 and 40, right?
Yes, exactly. They divided them into 4 groups. The 3 exercise models we just talked about, HIIT, threshold, and polarize, plus a non-exercising control group.
To have a baseline.
Right. The exercise groups trained 3 times a week. Now, to make it a perfectly fair fight, the researchers matched the internal training load across all the active groups.
Okay, wait. I have to push back here.
Sure, go ahead.
If the polarized group spent 75% of their time barely breaking a sweat down in zone 1, how could their workouts possibly feel as hard overall as the group doing 100% HIIT?
It's a great question, and it comes down to a metric called the training impulse, or TRIMP. They also use the rating of perceived exertion, or RPE.
Okay, so how does that balance it out?
It is all about the duration. The polarized group spent a vast majority of their time at a low intensity, but their overall sessions were significantly longer.
Ah, so they are putting in way more time to make up for the easy effort.
Partly, yes, but we also cannot forget the severe intensity of the 25% they spent in zone 3. Those intervals are brutally demanding. So when you balance the long, slow duration with the extreme spikes in heart rate, the total physiological toll balances out. The groups exerted an equivalent overall effort.
So they literally suffered the exact same amount, just in totally different ways.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the results. And after 10 weeks of this matched effort, they measured the physical and metabolic changes.
And while any exercise is better than none, one specific intensity distribution absolutely dominated the data.
Before we name the winner, let's share the baseline good news. All of the exercise groups saw significant improvements.
Yes, across the board.
Body mass dropped, fat mass dropped, resting heart rate decreased, and their cardiovascular fitness, their VO2 max, went up compared to the control group.
Which is fantastic. It shows that getting off the couch works, period. But what's fascinating here is how the polarized training significantly outperformed both HIIT and threshold training.
They didn't just win a little bit, did they?
Not at all. The polarized group led to much greater decreases in body mass and fat mass, and it elicited superior improvements in metabolic health. We're talking lower fasting glucose, lower total cholesterol, lower LDL, the bad cholesterol, and lower triglycerides.
That is incredible. And what about the cardiovascular fitness?
This is the craziest part. Crucially, the polarized group generated a very large effect size for increasing VO2 max.
Wait, really? Because I always thought HIIT was the absolute king of VO2 max.
Traditionally, yes, HIIT is famous for boosting VO2 max. But the polarized group jumped from an average of 28.3 to 32.7 milliliters per kilogram per minute.
That is a massive leap for a 10-week window.
It is huge. They completely outperformed the HIIT.
Okay, so the data proves that PL works best, but we really need to unpack the why here. Why does combining extreme low intensity with extreme high intensity create superior biological adaptations compared to, moderate training or pure high intensity?
To understand the mechanisms, we have to look at what's happening at the cellular level in these different zones. Let's start with zone 1. When you do massive volumes of low intensity work, you are building peripheral adaptations. You increase mitochondrial density, you build better capillary networks, and you improve insulin sensitivity.
Basically training the body to sustainably oxidize fat.
Exactly.
Mm.
And a huge part of that is something called GLUT4 translocation.
Oh, talk to me about GLU-24. I know it's related to blood sugar, right?
Yes. Think of GLUP4 as a transport doorway inside your muscle cells. Normally, insulin acts as the key to unlock that door, allowing sugar to move from the blood into the muscle.
But with obesity and metabolic disease, that lock gets jammed. Insulin resistance.
Right, the insulin doesn't work well.
Yeah.
But spending huge amounts of time doing low-intensity zone 1 contractions actually forces those GLUT4 doorways to open without needing insulin at all.
Oh, wow. So you just bypass the broken system entirely.
You completely bypass it, which explains the amazing improvements in fasting glucose.
Okay, so that's the magic of Zone 1. What are the mechanisms behind the 25% in Zone 3?
While Zone 1 upgrades the periphery, brief bursts of Zone 3 deliver a potent stimulus for central cardiac remodeling.
Remodeling the actual heart.
Yes. Pushing that hard creates massive venous return blood rushing into the heart. It stretches the left ventricle, increasing your stroke volume and your maximal cardiac output.
So your heart physically pumps more blood per beat.
Exactly. It gets larger and stronger.
Which brings up the danger of Zone 2. Why is avoiding Zone 2 so smart if you want these specific results?
Because training at that threshold creates a much higher perceived effort. You get greater cortisol release and cumulative fatigue, but without offering better adaptations than the extremes.
It's all the stress with half the reward.
Exactly. You don't get the huge volume of Zone 1 for the mitochondria, and you don't get the extreme stretch on the heart from Zone 3.
Okay, I want to use a diet analogy here to see if I'm tracking this right.
Go for it.
So polarized training is kind of like eating a giant, healthy salad for your baseline cellular health. That's your massive Zone 1 volume.
I like that.
And then you take a tiny concentrated shot of espresso for a quick jolt. That's your Zone 3.
Perfect.
But threshold training, living in Zone 2, is like just eating a massive bowl of plain pasta every day. I mean, It gets you full, but it's totally monotonous, and ultimately it just kind of stresses the system.
That is a fantastic analogy. The plain pasta just bogs you down without giving you the diverse benefits of the salad or the sharp kick of the espresso.
So physiological changes only matter if a person actually shows up to do the workout.
Oh, absolutely. The best program in the world is useless if you quit after a week.
Which brings us to the psychological edge here. I saw a staggering statistic from the study regarding compliance.
That really is amazing.
They had a flawless 100% compliance rate, 0 injuries across the board.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this shows the absolute psychological brilliance of polarized training.
Tell me more about that.
Alternating easy days with hard days prevents the dread that is usually associated with constant HIIT. It also prevents the sheer monotony of threshold training.
Right, because if I know I just have to go for a nice, easy walk today, I'm way more likely to tie my shoes and get out the door.
Exactly. It promotes optimal recovery and makes the routine truly enjoyable and sustainable. You aren't dreading the gym.
That makes total sense. Now, to be fair to the science, we do need to point out a few nuances and limitations of the study.
Of course, no study is perfect. First, it was only 10 weeks long. That's a relatively short window when we are talking about long-term metabolic health.
We'd want to see this over 6 months or a year.
Right. Second, it focused exclusively on young, untrained females with obesity. So we have to be careful about directly extrapolating these exact numbers to other populations, like older men or highly trained athletes.
And didn't they use heart rate instead of blood lactate to measure the zones?
They did. Using percentages of max heart rate is very practical, but it's not as precise as taking physical blood lactate measurements during the exercise, so there is definitely room for future research there.
Even with those limitations, though, the results are just mind-blowing. Let's synthesize this for everyone listening.
Sure.
For maximizing cardiorespiratory fitness, losing body fat, and improving metabolic health, the science heavily favors a polarized approach.
Yes, really does.
So you want mostly easy, comfortable cruising with just a tiny sprinkle of all-out effort.
That is the ultimate recipe.
We highly encourage you to go read the full 2026 study for yourself. Again, the title is Adaptive Responses of Cardiorespiratory Fitness and Cardiometabolic Risk Factors to Polarized versus Other Types of Training Intensity Distribution in Obese Untrained Females.
It was published in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine. It is well worth your time to explore the granular data and their methodology.
Absolutely. And while you are doing that, please make sure to follow the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our future deep dives into cutting-edge scientific literature.
We always want to bring you the best evidence available.
Before we wrap up, I want to throw one final provocative thought out there. In this study, they used a 25% high-intensity volume for the polarized group.
Which is a solid chunk of hard work.
It is. But when you look at observational data on elite endurance athletes, the fittest people on Earth, they sometimes use as little as 5 to 15% high-intensity volume.
Yeah, their zone 1 volume is just astronomically high.
Which raises an incredibly important question for all of us.
Yeah.
What is the absolute minimal effective dose of high-intensity suffering required to actually unlock these massive cardiovascular and metabolic benefits?
It's a fascinating question. How little can we push ourselves into the red zone and still reap all the rewards?
Something to think about the next time you are out for a nice, easy Zone 1 walk. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.